Hello, I'm Congressman Steve Cohen, and this is Congressional Report. I was recently given the opportunity through CARE and the Gates Foundation to accompany Congressman Don Payne of New Jersey and Jim McDermott of Washington State to the heart of Africa, to Rwanda, a nation that experienced a genocide in 1994, and the Congo, Goma, on the eastern edge of the Congo. I was allowed to take a staff member with me, and I had the great opportunity to travel with Randy Wade, my district director, who's now the most popular person in Africa. And we had an interesting 4 days. I've got some film, some videos I took on my iPod, and I'm not very, sometimes you'll see my finger, it's not the best, but Randy, what was your experience? Tell me, overall, your thoughts of our trip and what you learned.
First of all, I want to thank you and the Gates Foundation and CARE for allowing me the opportunity to see that part of the world. It's always been a childhood dream to go to Africa. And when I got out the trip, I had an opportunity to see how other people live and how poor they were and despair. But then I also saw a unity and a love of the people all working together, particularly in Rwanda. Now, Congo was a different story. Congo there was no infrastructure. It appeared that there was no government. And it's a country that's really in bad shape, very, very poor. And also I visited a camp, we were there together, where 40,000 refugees that was sitting up on a volcanic rock. And they had no running water. And
no toilets?
No toilets, no plumbing.
Lived in small little old tents. Little
huts. And it was just very, very, and the children, their clothes were very, very raggedy. It was just a sad situation. But their spirits in Rwanda, they were very high.
Rwanda was different. Rwanda, we visited the genocide memorial to the 800,000 people killed in 3 months when the Hutus killed Tutsis, and over 1 million people overall in the genocide. We visited there, but Rwanda's come back. It was amazing. 800,000 people killed in 3 months, over 1 million people because of tribal differences, but you don't see that today.
No, because, when we met with the Prime Minister, he brought that point out, that they don't have that division of tribes now. They don't have that. They're all Africans, and that's good.
Well, they're
Rwandans. That's exactly right. And you couldn't discuss any division. That they wouldn't put up with that.
I found, when I asked him, it was kind of interesting. I'm concerned about the environment and recycling and plastic and all that, and I asked him about that, and I was surprised. In Rwanda, if you bring a plastic bag into the country, they don't allow it.
No, they won't allow it.
Won't even allow it in because they're concerned. They recycle. The health system is the main thing we went to see about infant mortality, maternal mortality, violence against women, gender empowerment, women's empowerment. What did you pick up on the health system and the hospital we visited, the clinics and the workers?
Well, the health system there is still primitive, but it's better than not having anything. You saw the old buildings, and the Congo was very unsanitary. They were short of medical supplies. Most of the women there that we visit, they were HIV positive. A lot of children were suffering from polio, malnutrition, malaria. Just a bad situation. They really need a lot of help there. Now, the hospital in Rwanda was just a new facilities.
Yeah, we visited two. We visited
two.
The new one.
Oh, it was good.
It was beautiful.
It was very, very beautiful. Matter of fact, when we got there, a little baby had been born, just born just before we got there. 10 minutes, and I took a photo of that child, and it's beautiful. It was a beautiful thing.
And that hospital, which is the newest one, it had a plaque up for President Kagame being there at the dedication. I think it was last September. The physicians we met there were from connected with Harvard and with the Brigham Young Women's Clinic in Boston.
Yeah.
And these were really dedicated individuals.
Professionals, they were.
Given time to serve and in those capacities.
Matter of fact, the director of the hospital, the doctor, he was a pediatrician. Yeah, and he dealt a lot with the children, and you saw a lot of the deformity related to the children. But he was a true professional.
Now they didn't have. This was a new hospital, and it looked. It wasn't like Baptist or anything. They didn't have private rooms, but they prided themselves on the wards they had, that they were divided by a wall that gave them access to the wall for the machines to be plugged into and to use. Oxygen, all. But they still were maybe 8 people to a side and maybe 16 to a ward, and they had all kind of high-tech procedures, and that they had fans that recirculated the air through some vents they had at the top, some like jalousie type windows.
Right,
so the air was recycled at least, I think he said 16 or 30 times.
Right, we'll pull the air down and circle it throughout.
Pull it up.
Pull it up, right. Pull it up and circle it through the building. I mean, in that ward, right.
Yeah.
And it was very, very cool when we were there. It wasn't a state of the art, but it was better.
And then we went to the maternity hospital, and I'm trying to recall the maternity hospital. You remember the maternity hospital?
Oh, no, I don't want to talk about it. Can I forget?
We went to a maternity hospital, and that was like out of the dark ages.
It was very primitive.
That was in the Congo, wasn't it? After we'd been to the village, and it was very primitive. And we saw mostly dealt with women, but there were other patients in there as well. But it was real primitive. And we walked in rooms where there were just cots and maybe 8 or 9 or 10 women in a small room.
Yeah,
they were to give birth, and they were all just together.
Yeah, and that was just a very foul odor. They were all there, no air conditioning, nothing to
fans
refill the air, nothing to circulate the air.
It was pathetic.
Yeah, it really, really was. But one incident I remember when you and I, we were walking through the hospital, and this female.
You don't have to bring this story up. I wasn't going to do it.
You're going to do it.
I'm not going to do it.
I know you're going to do it.
I'm not going to do it.
And so, as we were walking, as the delegation was walking through, I was in the middle of the group, and she was seated on the side of the bed, and she pointed at my stomach as if I was pregnant that I needed to stay.
It was a funny moment.
Yeah, it was. It represented the pain. He ribbed me the whole time I was in Africa. He sure did.
And you know, the thing is, you don't see many. I saw very few people in Africa that were overweight. They walk a lot, and they don't have too much in the way of dietary, but no fast food. KFC hadn't made it over there. And people are always constantly walking, getting water or getting
working. Working because the villages are way up in the hills, and they have to come to market to get their food and personal belongings, whatever they want to buy. Then they have to go back up the mountain. I'm talking about with 100 and 200 pound bags on this wooden cycle that you have to operate manually. I think it's called a cockadoo or something like that. I don't know what it is.
Chukatu, whatever it is.
Chukatu, but whatever it is, it's something that I wouldn't want to do.
It's primitive. It's one big wheel and one small wheel, and then a board.
Right.
And they got like a little steering wheel, and they'll just push that along and put their goods on that product. It's something unique to the Congo.
Yeah. And transportation was a big problem for the village people, though. They did all of their walking.
Well, speaking of the village people, I'm going to show a little video here, and I'm not the best on doing these iPods, but I did the best I could. Let's see if it flips. When we're entering the village in the Congo.
Children over here, very handsome children.
Oh, yeah.
Children, families, more children. Our team coming through.
That's a village that they're named the garden after them.
The rest of the team coming through here. Big Daddy.
This is how we were greeted on arrival.
I didn't realize I was so big.
Entry into the stadium. village people.
I've got to work on my videography a little bit, and I've got some other videos in here. We'll pick some out. But it was just amazing. The children were so beautiful.
Oh, most
And when we
definitely.
drove around, we were in a caravan of about 5 vehicles, and they would, in the rural areas particularly, and most of the areas rural in Rwanda, they would just wave at the cars and love seeing us. It would be just quite an experience.
Right, the kids they were definitely beautiful. But one other important thing too, Congressman, that was very educational for me is when we would go into the village and we would have our sessions with the women and they would tell their stories. And several women talked about when they would go out in the evening and get the firewood, how the rebels that were out in the bush would attack them, rape them, keep them from their families for 2-3 days, and bring them, and then allow them to leave. And once they tell their stories to their counselors, the counselors would have them tested, and most of them would come up HIV positive.
Well, they did. It was. I had to ask the question. We came back in. If the women, this was in the refugee camps, and they'd go out and get sticks for firewood. That's right. And I said, well, if they get raped, why doesn't a man go with them? And some guy said, well, what, you have one man go, they have several men out there with guns. These were militia. And it's pretty lawless in that part of the country, in the Congo. And I said, well, then why don't the men go get the sticks? And he goes, that's not a man's job.
Yeah, and there were one.
It should become a man's job.
It should become a man's job, and that was. One lady told me that why the men didn't go, because the rebels would kill the men, kill their husband, but they would just only what they would do is just dastardly things to the woman. But I thought they should organize, get a group of men and set traps for them. That's the way you break that up.
Well, they didn't work in the Shelby County Sheriff's Department.
Well, that's true too, because you didn't have any governmental structure at all.
No, they just the eastern part of the Congo is like lawless, and we understood there was a man living a couple doors down from where we stayed named Bosco, who was one of the leaders of a militia leader, and when he would go out, he'd have guards with him. Would go to the grocery store, guards with AK-47s, and that was just typical day.
Yeah.
Now the roads in the were the worst roads we've ever experienced.
No. Well, when we were going up the hillside, I was a little concerned about that because I think you said the elevation was
about 5,000 feet.
That's high. That's way up, and we had no. It was a gravel dirt road sort of, and you had no boulders to stop you from sliding off the hill. Very narrow, and then there was times when 2 vehicles tried to get through at the same time. That was a major concern to me because I was looking at that height.
Let's see how this video did. I'm not the greatest producer or camera person, but I think this is the children in Rwanda that were so beautiful.
Yeah, that's the preschoolers.
Yeah.
Special. They're holding their thumbs up, and your thumbs up mean you're very special.
So we have.
I love Africa. That's what they're singing.
The little guy in the front.
Man in front.
He could dance.
Yeah, he could dance. He would love his country. They are so precious. Love them all.
Yeah, that was really cute. And the kids, they're up there, and they've got uniforms just like that we have here in America, but the schools, they got the schools together, and they've got schools in all the districts. Rwanda is much more organized. It's just like Paris compared to the Congo, but the kids can go, and then the mothers can go to the fields and work and not have to have the child with them.
I contribute that to CARE, though, because they've come in and organized the mothers and the families. Now that when they're teaching educational subjects, for example, they call it calculations. They learn the multiple
multiplication tables.
Yeah, multiplications. And one lady, she told us, she said that they know calculations now. She said, but we crave to read. We want to learn how to read, and that's a big thing with them. So they are really picking up when it comes to education, because in the Congo, the life expectancy, I think, is 46 years of age, and over 80% of the population is uneducated.
Yeah, literacy is very limited. These were the CARE teaches people kind of how to do child care and how to help as being healthcare counselors, and that's what we were when we went to that little village, and it was in Rwanda, where we had the instruction, and each city would have a little counselor that would stay with the children, like a mini daycare, and teach the children some things. They'd teach them to dance and teach them just those little skills, and it freed the mothers up for a while. And it's just, Rwanda's doing better, but it's still got a long way. The average income's $500 a year.
Yeah. You know, that's true, because you remember the story of the young woman that had trouble with her pregnancy, and she didn't have the $50 to call the ambulance service to come up the hillside to take her to the hospital down below the village. And the women all got together and built a cot. And
stretcher.
A stretcher, right. Built a stretcher. And they placed on the stretcher, and they had to walk at least 8 miles down the hillside with her to have the child, and got her there right on time. And then after the child was born, they took her back up the mountain, the hillside. Yeah.
We met with this group of women, and they put together some monies they had and made it for the group, so they'd have money in case it was another difficult pregnancy or situation. They'd have some money to hire the ambulance or get the person. And sometimes it's a 2-hour walk.
It is
to get to the road to get to an ambulance.
And all the mothers that participate in that group, they pay $25 a month. That's what that dues, $25 a month. So if those emergency occur again, then we'll have money set aside.
Let's show this video here. This is a little video I took. I held my camera and put it on the reverse side where you can see the kind of take a picture yourself. And I had these young children who had come up to the car and showed them how the camera worked, and they'd never seen an iPod before, of course.
What's going on? What is? Let's talk a little bit.
Yeah, I remember.
Those are their names.
Well, they were fascinated, and then after we did it, I showed them the video immediately thereafter, and they were really fascinated to see themselves on the video. The young kids came up to the car, and they were just fascinated by seeing us, and then partly by seeing me, because while in the city, in Kigali, it's 99 point whatever African, but so you see some white people there with the NGOs, whether it's Partners in Health or whoever, but you don't see too many, I think, going out in the country. And we drove up, we spent to the country rural areas, the little kids would come and holler, and they had, what was it, Bungari or?
Yeah, Bungadi.
It's Bungadi or whatever, and I said, well, that's the driver. What's that mean? They said, that means white person.
Right. Everywhere, they said it all the way up the hillside. But it was all in good faith, though.
Oh, they loved seeing us, and there was just something different.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a unique situation, and this was an interesting sign that I saw, and I took this picture because it was in Rwanda. Investment, yes. Corruption, no. Rwanda is a country unlike most of the others in Africa in that they are really into prosperity, and corruption is so frowned upon.
But you know what I found interesting when we were headed up the hillside in Rwanda? I noticed the difference in the infrastructure in the roads, and we saw so many Rwandans working on the roadway, and there were several Chinese that was there. And later I learned that the Chinese was contracted to do their infrastructure, and that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, the Chinese bid, and it's not a foreign aid thing. They bid and make money, and they send a contractor over there. This will show you a little bit of the roads there. The roads were the worst I've ever seen. Let's just get this up here. And if we can, the roads were just awful. Now, this was in the Congo. We're just driving down the street. And you get a little idea.
Yeah. And yeah, you're up and down. You're shaking because we're going over bumps,
Right.
and holes in the roadway.
As I said, this was the Sunset Strip of Goma.
Traffic, this wasn't the smartest idea in the world in the backseat. Videographer as well. I'm trying to find one of the, what are these machines called? Shutus? Shukutus. But we haven't come up
Shukutus.
on
That was
one.
close.
Yeah.
For the mechanized.
So they
Coming up.
they paid for roads in Goma, and the company dug up the roads, left rocks on the side of the road, left holes in the road, didn't finish it, and left.
Just took the money and
Took the money and ran.
And ran with the
and
money.
So that's what it is. And people said, we met people, one of the ladies that was with us who was had studied went to college at Vermont and was working in Rwanda in healthcare, and she lived in Washington for a while, attractive young lady, and was in the government working at the healthcare field. And she told me she was, when we saw her in the village, that she and her family came from Goma in the Congo. And she said her mother was afraid to go to work because she was afraid to get raped. Just going to work, she was afraid. And it's still that way.
It's still unstable up until a degree, but the Congo is really a very serious place that where on the in the refugee camp, those refugees, they are not allowed to really go back into Rwanda because those families that was in the refugee camp was related to the rebels that was involved in the genocide. So if they ever come out of there, they'll be killed. There's no doubt about that.
Now, parts of the country are really beautiful, and in Rwanda, but we didn't see it in the Congo, but in Rwanda, and this may have a little bit of footage here from the beauty of the area in Rwanda where we were. Let's see if how this comes up. Now, this is when we came to the hospital. So this is going to be a.
Right, that was the health clinic.
Right, in Rwanda.
That was the welcoming party.
Yeah, they were very gracious and very happy to have us there. I don't think they have too many congressmen come there. It was rather rare.
Very, very rare.
And this is Congressman Payne and McDermott back here, I think, and greeting some of the physicians and the healthcare professionals.
Counselors.
Yeah, so it was, one thing it did, not that we know it's so wonderful to live in the United States, but it is. I mean, it's people take too much for granted here on how wonderful a nation we have. We got a lot more to go, and we see pockets and places in our community where there's poverty
Right.
and there's
we don't have
need.
to go to Rwanda to see poverty. You
Exactly.
know that, as you said on our flight over. But I do know even poverty is here, but it's not like it is over there. It's
And
not.
some people ask, they said, why did you make this trip? Well, first of all, I'll make it clear, there was no government money involved at all.
Exactly.
It was paid for by CARE. We were invited guests by CARE and the Gates Foundation. But it's to see how the non-government organizations work and what they do around the world to help mostly on women's issues, and how they work with USAID. And we met with USAID officials all, and they complement each other. And question, and we mentioned over there's so much we could be doing in South Memphis. We need health clinics and community centers, and we've got Christ Community Health Center, and we've got, the opportunities that we do have here with the Loop, with the Med, which we visited right before we left, all the Loop clinics. But we need more and more health clinics here. And I did think about what we saw over there in the way of the central hospital and then the clinics. But then they have community health workers going out to the community, and that's something we don't have. And we might need to really help on our infant mortality problem and some of our health problems. But people have got access to ambulances and access to facilities here. It's not like there.
The interesting thing, that was a Washington Post reporter that was with us.
Michael Gerson, who was George Bush's speechwriter.
Exactly, and he made a comment to you, and correct me if I'm wrong. He said that some of the people that need to see this, I wish that some of the folk who need to see this in Washington, he was referring to some congressmen, I guess.
He was referring to Tea Party people specifically.
Yeah, okay, right.
This
and
was a
they need to
conservative
see
Republican
this.
who had worked for Dan Coates. He'd worked for President Bush. He'd worked for Jack Kemp and another individual who I don't recall.
Yeah, right. But he made that comment.
Yeah, the people needed to see what the NGOs had done and the need and what the USAID does.
Exactly.
And it's important for our country to have these relations and to make things important in the world.
It is, and to have those relationships. And according to the Prime Minister in Rwanda, I mean, he was gracious enough to meet with the delegation. And he said, take back to your country, Congressman, take back to your country that we're asking that you all invest in Rwanda. He said that, and your money would be in good hands. It would be a good investment.
Right, because Rwanda tries to. Let me show you a few pictures here before we get out of here. We're about out of time. This is a picture of a lake in Rwanda. We got a chance to see some scenery. We did not get to see any gorillas in the mist or any of the wildlife that they have there, but we did see some of the scenery there, and then this was there. And the last shot was some flowers I saw that were very beautiful. And in the distance, some mountains and the beautiful countryside. So there was some. We got to see some countryside. We got to see a lot of human conditions that made your heart pour out to people, to the young children.
And also, let it be known, we put in a lot of hard work. I mean, these trips is not a sightseeing adventure. I mean, we worked.
It was 24 hours from Memphis to Kigali. In the air and in airports, 24 hours and getting back the same way.
Yeah, and 4 hours to Atlanta.
Yeah, it was a tough trip to Atlanta. Well, Randy, I'm happy you came. I've got some videos in here we didn't get to see of you dancing with some of the people and you hugging the children. You were great, good. Randy. You were a great ambassador for our country, and the people loved seeing you. And it was an educational experience for both of us. And
again, I want to thank Kira and well as you for inviting me. It was a childhood dream, and you made that come true, and I'm truly thankful for that.
Well, I'm happy you went, and we had experience that most congressmen don't have, but Kara does great work, and so does the Gates Foundation.
Thank God we made it back home safe.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm Steve Cohen, Congressman Cohen, with my District Director, Randy Wade. We're back from Rwanda and the Congo, and we've been at work here in Memphis in the district, and we'll continue to serve our district, and thank you for watching, and thank you for the opportunity to represent the 9th District.
If I ride, I will know the way the trees smell after the rain. I will grow a heart so strong that hospitals will take Tuesdays off. If I ride uphill, I will eventually get to ride downhill. That's how it works. If I ride, my breath will fill the air instead of smoke and car exhaust. If I ride, road rage will turn into laughter. And I won't be a boy or a girl. I will just be a rider. If I ride, I will be strong.
Hi, I'm Mia Hamm. As an athlete, I know injuries happen quickly, so I've teamed up with the American Association of Orthodontists to ask athletes to play it safe. Wear mouth guards, face masks, and helmets to prevent injuries. Visit braces.org.
Hello, I'm Congressman Steve Cohen, and this is Congressional Report. And our special guest is a retired labor leader and community activist, and that's with a community activist in every sense of the word, and I'm really kind of a legend in Memphis. We like to introduce people like that to the community. Howard Richardson. Howard, native Memphian, welcome to Congressional Report.
Thank you.
You don't mind saying how young you are, do you?
No, I don't. I'm 80 years old.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And you're born here in Memphis?
Well, I was born in Senatobia, Mississippi, and escaped north in 1935 when I was 4 years old. So you can say I'm a native Memphian, but I was born in Senatobia, Mississippi.
And where'd you go to school?
I went to Jeter High School. I went to Capable Grade School and went to Jeter High School.
And then when you got a chance to go to work for the Hotel Employees and Restaurant Employees Union.
Yes.
In, was it 1959?
1959.
And you were how old at you? 20, 30?
I was 28, 28 at that time, yes.
And what was your first job and where were you stationed?
Well, my first job was a representative, and I was stationed in Little Rock and Hot Springs, Arkansas, organizing.
And you spent how many years with the union?
43.
So 59 to
2001.
Long time. And what was your position when you left the union?
I left was a senior vice president of the International Union.
And I first met you flying, I don't know if I was flying to Nashville or Washington, but it was on an airplane. I met you.
Yes, we were going from Nashville to Washington. And I met you before then, but we didn't remember. Someone reminded me lately that I met you during this Stan Snodgrass gubernatorial campaign.
Well, that's true. that was because you were real close to J.O.
That's correct. J.O. Patterson and I were co-directors of the Western Tennessee campaign for Snodgrass for governor.
And I became the youth chairman here in Shelby County, working over for Stan Snodgrass. A long time back.
You were quite young at that time.
And you were pretty young too, Howard.
Yeah.
But tell me from your experience in the union movements, and this is the eve of Labor Day as we have this program.
Yeah.
Where has the union movement labor been in Memphis? Where has it gone to, and where is it now?
Well, the labor movement in Memphis was relatively strong in the early years, in the 40s and 50s, because we had a lot of unionized plants in Memphis, such as International Harvester, Humpco, and there were a lot of unionized places. So in Memphis, the union was relatively strong, and the unions got involved in the political scene, and they maintained the strength for a good long while. And then over the years, the South began to evolve, where political scenes became more and more anti-union, and the unions somewhat weakened over a period of time. In recent years, since I have retired, I've tried to help revive it some. Of course, that's a long, drawn-out story. But right now, labor is, if we compare it nationwide, it's probably about on par to what the rest of the country is. And in fact, unions have been weakened greatly by the political scene, and of course, what is happening now with the Tea Party and the Republicans. There's a nationwide campaign now to weaken unions, but primarily it's directed at the weakening of the Democratic Party. This is what they're really trying to do. So the trade unions as such, particularly municipal unions, the object there is to weaken the Democratic Party so that they can hopefully get what they consider a permanent Republican majority in the United States.
Well, unions have been weakened. I know when I got into politics, and by the way, if people have noticed, there's a fly in this studio, and I don't think the fly has a library card. Somebody should not have let that fly in here without a library card.
He seemed to be bothering me a little more than you. I don't know what that's about.
Well, I had him the first show. When I got involved, Dan Powell was real involved here in the union movement, a COPE representative of AFL-CIO.
Yes.
And there was Dan, and there was Max Freeman, John Freeman's daddy, Charlie Poole, and different people involved over the year. Cordis Davis at the Building and Trades, but Building and Trades, I mean, it's all been weakened over the years.
Yes, and
AFSCME's been weakened. AFSCME's a great union, 1733, and we had Joe Warren as our guest last month, but they had Lehman Hood and some major leaders, and now it's kind of not the same.
Yes, well, the governments, the environment, everything has worked toward the weakening of the union, because there has been a constant campaign to demonize unions, and they do that by making unions as institutions rather than made up of working people. And because the unions do not have the pulpit, they do not have the media outlet, and so therefore they have no place to really tell their story on an ongoing basis. And as a result, the powers that be that trying to weaken unions to get work for less wages, to reduce the benefits, and of course these are the things that unions are about. And of course, when these things happen, unions are weakened, and of course the voice of the working people are weakened.
Some of the issues that over the years that you would say that unions are responsible for.
Well, unions are primarily responsible for the creation of and the maintenance of the middle class. You see, when unions started in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, they were about building wages, work conditions in the factories and the mills, and this is where their wages, their main object was to raise the standard of living, to guarantee retirements, health benefits. In other words, the standard of living, and this is what the middle class was made of and made up of. And the production of the middle class is primarily the result of unions. And of course, when the attacks politically, economically, and otherwise on the middle class, as the middle class was weakened, the unions were weakened because that's where their strength is, and that's where their viability is.
The union movement has always been supportive of a higher minimum wage.
Yes.
Of health care, national health care, and Medicare and Medicaid, and Social Security over the years.
Right. Well, you see, a lot of people say that the minimum wage, we were supportive of the minimum wage, but no unionized person is affected by the minimum wage, except that it's a kind of to raise the lower stage, it makes it easier for them to raise the wages above. So the minimum wage, health and welfare for people, in working people, those are all primary goals of the
OSHA laws.
Yes.
Occupational safety and health.
Right. Safety on the jobs, and not only just unionized places, but for all places of employment. Yeah.
And now there's so much effort in Washington to eliminate regulations. And if you eliminate regulations, some of them affect the environment. The EPA regulations are the water we drink and the air we breathe. But on the workplace, it makes workers more vulnerable to accidents if they reduce the OSHA regulations.
Right. And also, all of the regulatory agencies, and you'll notice that, and I'm not being partisan now, but during the Bush administration.
Bush the first or Bush the second?
Bush the second,
yeah.
George W.
Yeah.
And during the campaign in 2008, then presidential candidate McCain, he bragged about, he said, "I am the greatest deregulator of all." And what happened is that all of the regulatory agencies, they appointed people to those agencies, to run those agencies, who did not want to do what the agencies was made up to do. They wanted to downgrade the regulatory agencies so that the bigger business and could just do whatever they wanted to do, and including the safety, OSHA, all of these regulations that regulate food safety, health safety. They just went wild in downgrading it so that the people in these industries could just do whatever they wanted to, and to hell with the safety of the people, both union and non-union.
Now, when did you first start going to Washington with the union?
I started on a regular basis in 1975. That was the first time I had an office there and had responsibility in the Washington area. And I had a lot of responsibility there from 75 through my retirement in 2001.
And when during those years that you were up there, what different efforts were you involved in that you most remember?
Well, I was involved in basically two things. Primarily, I was in civil and human rights. I was a civil and human rights representative of our union. So then I interacted when I became active in A. Philip Randolph Institute, but I was also involved to a lesser degree in the politics of it, because the A. Philip Randolph Institute is the political arm of the AFL-CIO. And so I was involved in several things, including training of representatives, organizers for our union, but primarily doing a civil and human rights work for our union, interacted with the National AFL-CIO and to a lesser degree with the Congress.
And who were some of the people you dealt with in the union movement or elsewhere that you have the highest regard for in looking back in retrospect?
Well, I guess maybe the top of that list would be Bill Kircher. Bill Kircher was the director of organization, but Bill Kircher was the liaison between the National AFL-CIO and the Farm Workers Union during their formation. The other was Alan Kistler, who succeeded Bill Kircher as a director of organization. Of course, A. Philip Randolph himself was a person that I kind of idolized. I was became friendly with and kind of idolized Walter Reuther with the UAW. And there are others who don't readily come to mind, but those are some of the stalwarts in the labor movement that I dealt with at that time. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our general president for many, many years, Edward T. Hanley, who was the general president of our union from 1973 until he passed in 92.
Now, I went out to listen to Tavis Smiley and Dr. Cornel West at St. Andrews AME.
Okay.
And I don't agree with everything that Tavis says about the president. I understand where he can say certain things about the president as a commentator because he doesn't have to get 60 votes in the Senate. And I told him this, and it'll probably be on the show at some point. I said, you know, getting 60 votes in the Senate, which is what you have to do,
right,
and having to deal with the Congress, when the first Congress president was a Democrat, but this one is not. It's different. It's easy to comment on what you'd like and what I'd like, but there are realities of politics that sometimes makes it difficult. But he mentioned that what he was doing, and he was putting himself in high company, and he deserves to be in high company, but maybe this is pretty high. He said that Abraham Lincoln needed Frederick Douglass to push him. Franklin Roosevelt needed A. Philip Randolph to push him. What Lyndon Johnson did was being pushed by Dr. King. So much in civil rights has come. The presidents we look at for what they did, they were pushed by great leaders in the African-American movement, and one of them was A. Philip Randolph, and he's somebody who got a lot of credit.
Well, let me just comment briefly about Cornel West and Tavis Smiley. I listened with a great deal of disappointment at the criticism offered by Cornel West. Now, I respect a lot of things he said, but I'm disappointed to some degree with a few things the president let happen. One is that when he allowed the Bush tax cuts to
continue for another 2 years.
Continue those for another 2 years.
And raise the estate tax.
Right. Now, when he said that he would not agree to extend those taxes, and then he capitulated, in my opinion, that's the greatest political mistake he made, the greatest economic mistake he made, because that gave the Boehners and the Tea Party people the impression that he could be rolled. It seems at some degree, and I don't mean this as a criticism, I mean this is a real thing that happened. And then the second huge mistake he made, and I'm saying this is not the kind of way that Cornel West speaks about him, and I resent the way Cornel speaks about the president, and I can criticize him because I'm a great supporter of the president, but when he makes a mistake, I think he ought to be told. The second one is to allow the debt ceiling to be hooked to anything else. If he'd have said to them, I'm not going to allow you to hook these because they have no relevance, if you're not going to raise it, don't raise it. He would never had what he's got now, in my opinion.
And it's going to come back. We saw in the paper where the state's looking at tremendous cuts to state programs if the federal budget is reduced, which it will be,
yes,
and just how much it will. And of course, people don't realize sometimes how much the state governments and the local governments are rely on federal funds, and they're going to be cut. And when they're cut, and you have a hurricane, and FEMA doesn't have the money to respond, and the National Oceanic NOAA doesn't have the ability to have the satellites to track the hurricanes, which they did a marvelous job tracking this hurricane, and were able to put the resources in North Carolina and in Maine, knowing when it would hit and where it would hit. They wouldn't have known otherwise. Well, you're going to have more disaster and more destruction, more loss of life and property, and you'll pay for it on the back end rather than the front end.
And look at what the system, the majority leader in the House of Representatives said either yesterday or today, or both, that the emergency funds, you know, the FEMA now is down to about $800 million, and they needed something like several $1 trillion. And what he's talking about now is that this emergency funds must be offset by reduction in other parts of the government. I mean, the emergency fund, I mean, this is insane. This political, and you see, all of this is about one thing and one thing only. This is about making sure that a man named Obama fails. fails to the point where he cannot be elected in 2012. And then for people to put the welfare, the emergency needs of this country behind political gain, political aims, political goals is just unconscionable.
Well, they've said that. Mitch McConnell said immediately that the purpose, their main purpose, was to see that Obama wasn't reelected.
Right. And he has not changed that yet.
None of them have. And when you see the cuts that have been made, now their resistance to having new revenue, having the Bush tax cuts brought back, or at least at a level over $250,000, even over $1 million, they won't even be for increasing taxes on people who make $1 million a year and more.
Right.
And when they won't do that, that's revenue we don't have. So if there's, I mean, indeed, we need to deal with the deficit and pay and not have so much debt to, period, let alone to the Chinese. But part of that is like a diet. You need to lose some weight. You cut down on your calories and you increase your exercise. Well, you want to deal with the budget. You might make some cuts here and there, but you also increased your revenue. And we've got the lowest tax rate since the early 50s and the greatest disparity in wealth since the early 50s. Well, this can't go on.
No, well, if they, you see, if they want to really reduce the deficit, they need to grow the economy. And you see, but they're not really interested in reducing the deficit. This is a political issue with them. These people, the one bottom line is to make sure that Obama is a one-term president. And so they are willing to jeopardize anything, the economy, the welfare of this nation, in order to obtain that objective. And at some point, the American people are going to I shouldn't say it that way. At some point, the American people are going to more and more understand what this is about, and they're going to turn on them. And I'm hopeful and I'm prayerful that this is going to backfire on big time.
Well, the cuts that have been made already to get the debt ceiling raised are going to impact jobs. They may be government jobs, state jobs, but that's going to impact jobs, and that's going to cause more of a demand for services for those people who don't have incomes, whether it's health care or other services, and yet we're not going to have the money to provide it. So the people who get hurt are the people who are the most vulnerable.
Right.
And that's unconscionable. But that's what they're doing. They're hurting those people, and they're letting the wealthiest people who are benefiting and have the lowest tax rates in 30 get away without contributing, so it's not shared sacrifice.
Right.
I talked about this on Fox News one day with Neil Cavuto, and he starts coming on to some chart about people that don't pay taxes. It's not the issue. They don't have any income. And if they do have income, they've got deductions, which they're entitled to, that mean they don't have to pay taxes, but they're still paying payroll tax, they're still paying sales tax, they're still paying other kind of taxes. They're just not paying the income tax because their deductions mean they don't have to pay it. And
every person who earns any money whatsoever pays taxes. Now, they may not pay income tax because of the low income, but they pay payroll taxes, they pay Social Security, unless they're a municipal employee, and if they're a municipal employee, they pay some other tax in lieu of that tax. So it is a total misnomer when they say these people, if they earn any money, they pay some taxes. Now, they may not pay income tax because there are millionaires who don't pay any income tax. So this is nothing.
It's a red herring.
Right. And it's, I forget the name. I don't know if it was Orrin Hatch. It was talking about what these people who are on welfare need to do is start paying taxes. How do you pay taxes? You don't even have an income. It's just ridiculous.
And the taxes have been cut on the wealthiest, and that's $1 million income and more. They won't increase the taxes at the $1 million level and above.
Right.
Won't touch it. So that's just hard to fathom, and that's why so many services are going to be cut and people are going to suffer it. But the services are cut and federal money's cut, jobs are lost, and if jobs are lost, it hurts the president.
Yes.
It hurts the economy. I read the other today in the paper about Libya, and one of the Libyan rebel leaders said that the Libyan government wouldn't surrender by Saturday, which they're not, apparently, that they'll have more bloodshed. And he said, sometimes you have to shed blood to get to where you want to get. Well, he could be one of the ones that dies. They've had Libyan leaders die as well in the war. But that makes you think of some of these people's attitudes. It's like, to get to where we want to get, which is a Republican president, we're going to have some people suffer. And that's okay to get to their purpose.
And unnecessarily suffer. Because, a lot of the unemployment that's coming about is governmental, because they're cutting governmental budgets. both federal, state, and local, and you take here in Memphis, they're cutting and I don't mean to relate this to the national level, but it's an effect of it. A lot of in the papers today, they were saying that there's going to be a lot of people cut from the state programs that are funded by federal money. When that money is cut off, then of course these programs are going to die, and it's going to cause additional unemployment with state and some of the municipalities.
And the American Recovery and Investment Act, which generally condemned by the other side, had no votes in the Congress to pass it. 40% of it went to tax cuts. It's a $770 billion deal, and they talk about it and say it was $770 billion and it didn't do any good. 40% of it was tax cuts required to get the votes of Senator Snowe and Senator Collins from Maine to make it pass in the Senate, 2 Republican senators, and they can't even give credit to themselves and claim that 40% of it worked, which was their idea. And the rest of it worked because 3 million firemen and policemen and teachers would not have had their jobs. And they're going to lose the set jobs of firemen, policemen, and teachers if federal funding is cut.
Well, now, let me just bring one thing in that I want to encourage you to tell the president. I understand that he has asked for time to speak to the joint session of Congress this coming Wednesday night, a week from tonight. And I hope that he will present to the Congress a massive, a comprehensive jobs program. There's several schools of thought. Some say that he should present a program that he hopefully could get through
Be practical.
Be practical. I disagree with that. What the president, in my opinion, ought to do, he ought to present to the Congress the necessary programs to get the jobs program, to get this economy moving. Now, he should be able to assume that a reasonable Congress will pass this. If they don't, to present what he would call a reasonable program, they're going to turn that down, because if it is only politics they're going to play with, they may as well play it against a program that makes good sense to the American people. And then if they refuse to pass it, go to the American people, because otherwise he's not going to get anything done anyway.
I'm with you, Howard, and I voted against the debt ceiling, deficit cutting bill, which gives 12 people the power that should be in the hands of 535. And if they don't agree, come up with something, then you get into the sequestration, which is these draconian cuts. And the whole idea there is that there's going to be so many cuts in the defense spending that the defense lobbyists, and this was kind of a shocker to me, that the defense lobbyists would be so against it that they could get the Congress to vote for what the 12 recommend. That the idea wasn't anything like, well, it's for the America or for our soldiers or for the defense of our freedoms. It was about the defense lobbyists' power to get the Congress to do what they should do. So it's a mess, and we should have had revenue in there, and that was one of my main concerns, the shared sacrifice, the lack thereof. And hopefully we'll have it. The president does need to be like Roosevelt and be a leader. He spent too much wanting to be, bring this, which was a great speech in 2004 that catapulted him into the national spotlight. There's not a red America, there's not a blue America. There's the red, white, and blue, there's all, it's just Americans. Well, the other side doesn't see it that way. You can't be the great uniter when the other team is, no matter what you do, they're going to be against you. And he's run up against that.
And he has to understand that. He has to say, now he has to do what is good for this. And then if he go to do like Harry Truman, go to the American people and say, listen, these are the things that they should do. They're not doing it. I can't make them do it. You can. And of course, as you well know, I'm not bashful about, as my congressman, you can't say that I don't write you. A lot of people say, well, you don't have to write to Steve Cohen because he's going to be on the right side. I write you and let you know that I appreciate what you do, and I also write you to urge you to vote like I know you're going to vote anyway. Well,
I appreciate that, and I apprate your letters. Whenever I get them, I know you're going to have several good columns, some of which I might have read, some of which I might not have, but I always read them, and it reinforces your arguments and your positions that I have, because we share a similar philosophy. You're, I think, kind of known for distributing columns and interest to people in power and to others to influence public opinion, and that's an important thing.
They say I'm one of the greatest customers of the Postal Service.
Well, we toured the post offices today. Randy and I toured the 5 stations that are talking about closing.
Oh, okay.
And there were people at every station, don't close my station.
Right.
This is where I've got my box. This is where I get my money order cashed. This is where I come and put my mail. You know, I didn't understand their criteria, and it's important. We went to Frazier, we went to the Hollywood station on Tunica, we went down to Trezevant, to the Lamar station on Trezevant near Airways and Lamar.
Right.
And we went down to Mallory, and we were downtown at the station on in the Peabody Place. Lots of people in there, lots of people, and I understand how business is changing with FedEx and UPS and internet and email and tweeting and all those different things. But you know, there's a service that can be, and the post office can find different ways to find income. I don't think the post office is necessarily looking to do that. And if they didn't ship all their business out to Kroger and Walgreens, maybe they'd have more people come to the post office.
Yes, well, that's you know, I don't have a lot of knowledge about, because it just recently become an issue, and that's one of the areas that I have not studied. So I can't speak expertly. I do know that you visited, and I won't name the post office. I do know that you visited one post office today that I have personal interest in. After we get off the air, I want to encourage you to save it.
There's that story I know. I think I know that story. We're going to try to save them all.
Okay.
Last time we saved all of them but the Lee station, and there were 4 or 5 on the list, and they only closed 1.
Oh, the Lee on Mississippi and
that
Crump,
closed.
right, okay.
That was very little used. And in fact, do you know any of Lieutenant Lee's family?
No, I don't. I knew him very well, but I don't know.
Let me put a word out here today to everybody listening. We were with the postmaster today, and she said she took a beautiful portrait, painting, I think it was, a painting of Lieutenant Lee. And if there's a Lee family member out there that would be appropriate to be the holder of the keeper of that photograph, she has it in her office. She'd like to make it available. Or a historic group where a picture, a painting of Lieutenant Lee should be. It's there, and nobody knew about his family.
Well, you know, there's one person that may, and I can say it here, that may know, is Benny Hooks' older brother named Raymond Hooks.
Might have taken it. It's a painting, it's not a portrait.
Okay, but he may know someone from the Lee family, because I used to know Reverend, but I know the Hooks were very close to Lieutenant Lee himself and to his family. So if Raymond is listening, he may be able to get to touch with your office or someone to see what they can do about that.
Howard, I'll call Raymond. I thank you for being on the show, especially this Labor Day. The show's going to run for a while. By the time it goes on, people will know what the president said, and they'll know that I've influenced him to say the right thing, because Howard Richardson got me to do it on Congressional Report.
And you had better be at the Labor picnic on Monday.
Going to be there.
Good. I have your tickets outside.
You got them. Let's book it. Howard, thank you for coming, and thank you for all you've done in the community, for working people across this country, for the people in Memphis, and for issues of importance to our city, and staying abreast of the issues and keeping our public officials on the ready.
Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. I'm Congressman Steve Cohen. This has been Congressional Report with Howard Richardson, labor activist, citizen activist, my friend. Have a good Labor Day. Have a good September. Go Tigers. This has been Congressional Report. Thank you for watching.